You are listening to the Kinetic Man Podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm David, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living a life defined by uncommon action that is full of purpose, adventure, and meaningful relationships. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours, and together achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to leave the potential life behind and become kinetic men.
David, I know you wanted to start this conversation.
Hey, I do.
Okay, I'll let you. I'll let you this time. Typically, I have like the first words, which I actually did, but you go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. And technically, you did have first words, so we're still on track. We're still on
track.
Jon, first off, amazing book. Absolutely loved Fighting Shadows. Just so profound. One of the things you guys talk about in there, there's a lot of things you talk about. It's very specific to men, loneliness, friendship, and I'm just wondering. I would love a new best friend. And I'm not saying that we just fast forward through all the years of building and bonding and time to become best friends, but would you be interested in taking that journey with me?
No, Jon, say no.
Well, listen, mate. Let's just see what God does.
Yeah.
Let's just see what God does.
Good answer.
That was a great answer.
I'll be back. You guys are in Missouri. Are you in Missouri?
Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I'll be in Colorado in January. Maybe we'll
explore further then.
Okay, good. Let's explore further.
Yeah,
Jon,
we'll explore further then.
I'll just tell you right now, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work being David's like best friend.
Love, mate. Other-centered, sacrificial care. I mean, that's the nature of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll make you better. Is what I hear. I'll make you closer to God through.
Thank you.
The expression of trial and love.
Would it be like iron sharpening iron or something amazing like that?
That's right.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, hey, well, let's dive in. Let's skip all the funny stuff, but we want to dive into this book. But first, can you just give a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, who is Jon Tyson?
Yes, I am an Australian American. Grew up in Australia. I moved to the US to study theology when I was 20. I'm a butcher by training, so I dropped out of high school to do an apprenticeship in the meat and culinary arts, which comes in very handy twice a year, carving that Thanksgiving turkey and the Christmas meal. It's like all those years of practice. I became a Christian when I turned 17. I became a Christian in an incredible move of God in the Pentecostal church, Assemblies of God. I have been married for 26 years, married an American. I have 2 kids. I've got a son who's 24. He lives in New York City. He serves on our church staff. I have a daughter who's a senior in college, about to go to grad school down in Tennessee. And I pastor a church called Church of the City in New York. I've been there for 20 years. I've written a few books. I am passionate about prayer and awakening. I'm passionate about working with men, fatherhood, passionate about the church. And I smoke a lot of cigars, listen to a lot of jazz music, and ride a Harley Davidson like a typical white middle-aged dude trying to find something in his heart. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I love that. And Stu, your brother-in-law, we have other people in our lives that are close, that are Australian Americans, pastors as well, which is fascinating.
Who have you got? Tell me who you got again.
My brother-in-law is from Australia, and his name is Joel Megley. He married my sister.
Is he in Colorado?
No, he lives actually in Wisconsin right now. They were missionaries. They lived in Vietnam for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And they've now moved back, and he is a professor at the Bible College in Wisconsin for Ethnos 360.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So very cool.
We learn all of the fun Australian sayings.
The lingo.
The lingo.
Yeah.
Jon, I want to dive in. So we are specifically wanting to talk about Fighting Shadows, which both Stu and I, it's funny, as I read the book, and then last night as I was preparing for today, I was going back through some chapters and just looking for some specific lines. I was like, man, I cannot, I read it diligently, and I didn't even scratch the surface mentally, the depth of the book. My brain could not handle all the goodness. And so as I went through it again, I'm like, man, I'm going to take this book section at a time and dive in, because I think every single chapter And so to be specific, you talk about the shadows of despair, loneliness, shame, lust, ambition, futility, and apathy. And each of those chapters, you start with a truth, or I'm sorry, a lie and a truth, and then you go deep. And it was such I mean, it was a master class level on these topics. And so I'm committing here on the podcast that I will go back and revisit these and because I think there's so much richness that to apply even a little bit of it can be life changing. But specifically, and it just works out this way. This is how God works, I think. Stu and I, the shadow of ambition was so fascinating. And it's something that you highlight and that we completely agree with, that it's just not a topic that's widely spoken about. It's not widely understood. And so I asked, hey, can we narrow this down to one section and talk about it? And you're like, well, hey, man, that's my favorite chapter. I wrote it anyways. And so I think it just works out beautifully. But let's dive in, because I think this topic is so misunderstood. And for all of our listeners, go get the book. We're just going to scratch barely the surface of the surface of the surface today, and there's so much richness that you need to grab the book. But let's talk about ambition, and if you don't mind, start kind of like you do with the book, the lie, the truth, and then let's dive in. Does that work?
Well, yeah, I want to say one thing. First of all, I appreciate that those kind of words about the book. Um, I think the best thing about the book for men is not any particular chapter. It's the fact that we're hitting so many core themes in one book. Men need to talk about all of those things, but if you were to say to a guys, hey, let's do a 7-book men's study that will take us through the next 84 weeks, and we're going to process these things book by bit, most guys are not going to finish that study. So
Nope.
the best feedback we get is like, hey, man, this was coming after my heart week after week and drudging a bunch of stuff up that would have normally taken a lot longer. So that I think is the thing that people have enjoyed the most, is not even the content, but just like those themes being forced out of the darkness and brought into the light. So I think that on its own makes the book worth doing with a few guys. Like, listen, man, let's just talk about this stuff.
Hey, John, one
Um,
other thing, just real fast
yeah,
before you get into ambition. I think it was under the section of loneliness, but you said that what we don't realize is that something is so life-threatening until it's too late. And I feel like every single one of these shadows is that way. You talked about it specifically in loneliness, but I think all of these, like, you don't realize it until it's too late unless you're intentional about digging in and actually figuring this stuff out. So
yeah,
I thought that was powerful.
okay, good. I agree. I agree. Talking about ambition. Ambition has been the number one struggle of my life. The dominant, you call it an idol, any personality test, any whatever you want to call it. I am going to be in that place where I am driven to do something significant with my life. My first memories as a kid is like doing well in sports and being like, how you like me now? Do you know what I mean? It's just sort of like there's that has been, it's not even the quest for affirmation as much as it is that sense of drivenness for it. Donald S. Whitney at the start of that chapter says one way to clarify your spirituality is to clarify your ambition. And ambition in the church is sort of a little bit of a dirty word. Like, our assumption is that anybody who's ambitious is not godly. Like, if you're ambitious, that's not godly. James K.A. Smith sort of responds by saying, when you really examine it, the opposite of ambition is not humility, it's cowardice, it's fear. And so the people that never want anything or never do anything are the ones who feel like they can sit back and judge everybody. But sort of that timid apathy is not the godly alternative to ambition. Ambition is a biblical concept. Paul said, my ambition is to preach the gospel where Christ is not named. So the book of Romans is like, there's something I want that is driving me and I'm coming after it. It says in 1 Thessalonians, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to work with your hands. So I think there's something in there about, it's desiring is good. Where that desire and hunger takes you determines whether your ambition is godly or ungodly. So most New Yorkers that I pastor are ambitious. You don't pay that much stupid rent and put up with that many rats and all the drama and the work hours and all of that if you don't want something. And New York is a great city because it's filled with people who want greatness. Unfortunately, when it's idolatrous, it does a ton of damage. One little book recommendation that's not in our book. I read a wonderful book on ambition called Return on Ambition. It's not a Christian book, but the implications are huge because in it, it's a woman who writes a book. She makes the case that you've got to figure out how to get to the edge of ambition where it's a gift and not to the point of ambition where it damages you. So ambition may get you your dream job, but if your dream job results in you neglecting your family, it turns out ambition it will damage you. And she says return on ambition. It's a commodity that you have to get the right return on before it becomes a negative commodity that does damage. I really love that framing, and I wish I'd read that book before I wrote that chapter, but I read it after I wrote that chapter. So yeah, it's like I think ambition is a potent fundamental good, but it is very, very easily misdirected towards the wrong things. Most of the good done in the world is done by men with holy ambition. And most of the damage that's done in the world is men with unholy ambition. And so the goal, this is what Jesus is about, is redirecting the desire for greatness from worldly greatness to kingdom greatness. That's the great quest of that has been the great journey of my heart to redeem the ambition that I have.
John, one of the things you said in the book that I thought was really, really interesting, you talked about a study and said that 86% of young Americans want to be social media influencers. And
Don't you?
I totally do.
Okay.
I totally do. I love all the likes and the heartsies and the follows. Now, I'm curious, like, and this is probably an easy answer, but do you feel that because of the social media, because of the iPhone and the phone in front of yourself, do you think it's just exacerbated this problem even more so with this idea of ambition and success and lots of shiny objects?
Yeah, 100%. It has given us the delusion that all opinions are equal.
Yeah,
So I mean, you don't even have to be invited onto a podcast now. If no one invites you, you can start your own podcast. Do you know what
that's
I
what
mean?
we did.
Like the platform is as available as ever, and it
Yeah,
requires nobody else to assist with it. So everyone, platforms used to be guarded, and in many ways, there was a process of earning your right to speak from it, and that has absolutely melted away to where everybody thinks that they have a right to be seen and heard. That's where most of the anxiety, like the social research says, that's where most of the anxiety sort of comes from. I just was at an event called Think's Next Gen Leader Summit, and there was a wonderful talk Rebecca Lyons gave on anxiety. And she said the third greatest cause of anxiety amongst Gen Z was the sense of feeling overlooked. And, FOMO,
wow.
we sort of joke about that, fear of missing out, but like there's a tremendous sense. If you're a 14-year-old girl and you go on TikTok or Instagram and all of your friends are at a party and you are not invited and you realize that you have been left out. Now, when I was growing up, no one would know. You at least have a peaceful weekend, find out on Monday morning. So your whole weekend wasn't riddled with the what's wrong with me, why didn't they want, and then you move into sort of voyeurism where you're looking on and then you hate all your friends because you can't make sense of it. So yeah, I think you have to carefully guard against that. We need to pay attention to why we want attention and why we want what we want our ambition to achieve. Probably one of the most remembered sermons I ever gave at our church was from Nehemiah chapter 8. And it's when Ezra the priest come in and they build platforms so they can stand up and read the word of the Lord over people. And the people cried out, bring out the book of God. And we sort of said in our church, the only reason you need a platform is to declare the word of the Lord. And I said to my church, if I ever get up and it's just all starts being about me, I want you to yell out from the back of the room, bring out the book, because we don't want to hear from you. So I think all of us need to sort of interrogate our own hearts and ask the question, what do I want the platform for? Is this a way I'm going to overcompensate for my loneliness or inadequacies? So yeah, we definitely have to guard our hearts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting as Stu, you're joking about that, but I know Joe. No kidding. I was reading about. I think it was specifically how you broke it into ambition expressing itself through domination and recognition.
And recognition, yeah.
Right. And I as I was reading that, I was like, that is so amazing. I need to take a picture of this and post it. And I was so convicted in that moment. And it forced me and it ultimately came out to what I believe to be, I just want to share what this book offers, but it forced me to question what is my objective here to get something out of this post, right? Or is it
It's the
genuinely
worst,
to
man. It's the
Want some
it's
worst.
worse.
heartsies? Want some heartsies and some likesies?
Some Harks and Lexi, but what I will honestly conclude on that is it was going to be completely focused on you in the book, right? And so it was more, man, this book needs to reach more hands because of the things like this. But it forced me to pause. I was like, man, am I one of those 84%? If I were asked today, I would want to be an influencer, whatever. But if you don't mind talking about that too, like I found that to be fascinating, and I don't know if it was because of an Australian perspective, but the words around dominating, in particular, because I'm always saying, oh, dude, crush it. And I never even thought or considered that until reading this section of the book where you're like, hey,
Mm.
ambition, the manifestation of ambition a lot of times is domination and recognition. And I just found that to be very insightful. And so, if you don't mind, just some insight. Is that from an Australian perspective, or is that something you're noticing here? Is that something kind of ubiquitous in the
Well,
West?
it is amongst the next generation because many cultures have been flattened by technology. So kids in Australia are looking at the same stuff as kids in the US. For an older generation, it definitely is. Um, so just a humorous note. I was working on a particular project in New York and I had created some content that was 100% unique to me, which means I'd basically taken some words. I knew exactly where I got them from. I put them together in a fresh frame. And I'd had a conversation with another pastor and he'd taken them from me without attributing them and put them in a book. And I was just really pissed. And why? And then so I'm just frustrated, like freaking taking my stuff. It's just driving me crazy. That was mine. My stuff would have been better than his stuff. And people should know it came from me.
It's
And
all
so I felt the
godly. That's all godly.
hang on a
Totally
sec.
godly.
I felt the Holy Spirit say domination and recognition. And dude, I was put into such profound repentance, like fear of God. You just wrote a chapter on this, and this thing's still getting triggered in your heart. So yeah, man, that stuff is domination, the desire to win, and the need to look good while you're doing it. That is Satanism, mate. That is, Satan wanted the glory. He wanted victory over Jesus. He wanted all the attention. It's satanic. It's also very American. Um, the American, the American
I don't know why I
sense
find that
of
funny.
the American sense of yeah, it's the violence in the language, killing it, crushing, he's freaking destroying it. It's also aggressive. You go to the UK and they would say things like, "Oh, he's doing quite well. Oh, he's doing well. Yes, quite well taken care of." In America, it's like destroying it. It's also competitive, the language. And so I think that does get into our psychology. America loves winners. Australia has what they call tall poppy syndrome, which means we humanize our leaders. Americans worship their leaders. And
Wow.
and so because in sometimes there's some sort of risk in I don't know how you describe it. If you it's getting it's a lot more critical now because of politics. But if you elevate yourself, everyone's going to take shots at you. But in America, if you elevate yourself, a lot of people love you. And so I think there tends to be more of a tendency to want that attention in the US. So yeah, man, it's complicated. The problem with crushing things is it's normally people that get crushed.
Mm.
Crushing it. Who's getting crushed? What's getting crushed? It's normally others, mate. That's why if when it gets in the church, it can do so much damage in churches when pastors are crushing things to win. It's often people. That's not good. So we've got to be honest about this in our hearts, man. And we've
Yeah.
really got to ask God. I don't think Jesus Well, two things I want to say. Number one, what's amazing about Jesus is that Jesus made people believe that there was greatness in them. Like there was something. These are teenage fishermen that nobody had believed in or thought could be used in any significant way. Their life was like catching fish in a small village on the edge of the Roman Empire on their best days, getting a little bit of life. Jesus comes along and says, I'm going to make you fishers of men. I see more in you. So Jesus, number one, Jesus had a capacity to awaken greatness and vision in men. But then number two, he had to redirect that greatness. You think about this. This one is so wild. He's just washed their feet. This is the Last Supper. And it says a dispute arose amongst them as to which one of them should be considered the greatest. He's got to be like, I just washed your feet. And now you're fighting. I'm about to go to the cross. And you guys want to fight about who's the greatest? And so then he says, the Gentiles lord it over one another. This should not be amongst you. Greatness is about servanthood. Greatness is about being last. Greatness is about laying down your life. So again, I think that's really funny.
So why not just resist ambition? Us godly men, let's just not try to like succeed in life and do well and be wealthy and do all kinds of really great things in the world.
Well, the problem with that is that if you don't get redeemed ambition, you will live in a world absolutely controlled by ungodly ambition. So if you withdraw and you become passive, all you say to the rest of the world is, I want your ungodly ambition to dominate and dictate reality. And it turns out there's not many godly blokes at this point, mate. Not many of the billionaires that I'm aware of are godly. There's a few, but not many, you know. So you've got, I think the key is to redeem our ambitions, to convert it from unholy ambition to holy ambition. And in the chapter, I talk about, it's sort of based on the life of Nehemiah, because he's probably my favorite leader in the Old Testament. Massive impact, normal bloke, not a priest. And then all of a sudden he gets a vision and he's just completely drawn into it and transformed. And it's a vision. It's a staggering vision that shapes history. So if he
Yeah.
didn't have that holy ambition, mate, it would have been the status quo.
Well, and I'll never look at Nehemiah the same again. Stu and I are wrapping up the Bible in a year, and so we're kind of at the end of the New Testament and Old Testament, just the way it's framed, and just my eyes have been open in different ways reading it this time through. And I'll tell you, Nehemiah, it was fascinating. The way that if I'm honest, I just kind of, I'm back in Nehemiah and I read it, and it did not hit me the way that
Mm.
you framed it in this book, and it was absolutely incredible, and it made the study of Nehemiah so much more rich, right? It just made it with a different context. That's like, oh, dude, this guy was a guy of ambition, and my question is comes from that. Actually, before I go to the question, you touched on this quote, but I think it's so this one hit me right between the eyes, and I want to bring emphasis to it again. So you said the opposite of ambition is not humility; it's sloth, passivity, timidity, and complacency. And you said we sometimes like to comfort ourselves by imagining that the ambitious are prideful and arrogant, so that those of us who never risk, never aspire, never launch out into the deep get to wear the moralizing
The
mantle of
moralizing mantle.
humility. Dude, so
Yes.
good, man. The
That's,
moralizing mantle of humility. But this is how you wrapped up this. I think you were quoting somebody else.
that's James K. Smith. Yeah.
Yeah. But this imagining is often just thin cover for lack of courage, even laziness. Playing it safe isn't humble. And that was so powerful. I had to read that again and again. Obviously, I took it down on my notes because I think we have this strange, it's almost like when we talk about money, right? And people misquote the Bible. Oh, money's the root of all evil. That's not what the Bible says. And I think ambition is very similar to how we deal with and how we reflect it and moralize the moralizing mantle of humility. I love that. But one of the things that goes to the question is you highlight to get out of this, to get to the root of it, what Nehemiah did is learning to ask kingdom questions. And I found that to be fascinating because I think a lot of us want to give opinion. We want to give opinion, our perspective, as you said, get online and post all these things that I think. But in reality, the power comes through the questions. Do you mind talking on that a little bit?
Well, Sam Gibson, one of the pastors at our church, says, the questions you ask determine the culture you create. And so, what are most of our world? What are most of our worlds focused on? How can I get a bit more money? How can I get a bit more rest? It's like it's me, 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 me. And if your orientation, if questions are always coming back to you, you're going to have a very self-centered life. The people that shape history are the ones who ask different questions. And in that question, Nehemiah, so he says, how are the remnant who returned? And he's showing that the horizon of his concern exceeds beyond the boundaries of his own life. And again, most people's horizon of concern never gets past, do I have enough money? Are my people good? Am I happy? And those are they're not wrong questions. They're very small questions. And I think what God's looking for, this is quoted in the book of Jeremiah, it says, "O Jerusalem, who will weep for you? Who will inquire and ask how you are?" God's always wanting to find people who are questioning what he's questioning and caring what he's caring about. And the size of our questions is often a revelation of the size of our hearts, the size of our vision. I think the modern man is just saying, not my people, not my problem. And I think God's saying, my people, my problem. And he's just looking for people who will care about that. So yeah, it's way more about being curious and less judgmental and more open to what's happening. So yeah, I mean, it could be anything. You're in your local community. Instead of saying like, why do those kids act like that? Instead of asking, I wonder why they haven't been formed. What's happened to them in their history that has brought them to the point? Instead of judging someone for not providing you the service you want, you ask the question, I wonder what the underlying stress, tension, and trauma that person's been through in their heart that's causing them to react like this. Just different kind of questioning results in a different kind of reality. So ultimately, our questions sort of determine the world we live in, the things we pay attention to, and what we love. So yeah, another way to evaluate your spirituality is to ask, what are you questioning and most concerned about? In that chapter, I try and talk about how if it shows up in our prayers too. Most of us reverse the Lord's prayer. So we just start with like, keep me safe. I'm just getting killed here with temptation, and I got all of these needs, and people are driving me crazy. I need relational relief through forgiveness. Also, God, yes, Father, your kingdom, your glory. Like our prayers are all disordered around ourselves. So I think God is always honored. Yeah, I mean, you know what this is like. I don't know if you guys have kids, but if you have kids, when you walk in the room, they're like, "Can I have money? Can I have the car keys? Why?" But can you imagine if you came in and one of your kids just sat down and said, "Hey, just take a little minute here. What's on your heart for this family? What sort of generational influence are you trying to leave through our home? And how can I align under that vision?" You would just be going, would you like a new car? Which college would you like? You would rush towards them because they're aligning their interests with yours and they're caring about something bigger than just themselves. I think in many ways, God probably feels the same way. He's asking, who's going to care about what I care about? This is the whole cry of the Old Testament. Where are the watchmen on the walls? Where did the watchmen go? Is there none? I sought for a man. I couldn't find any. No one seems to care about what God cares about. And you ask those questions and you get brought into the heart of God. You'll get into a conversation and unlock something in your relationship with God that I think would break many of us out of our boredom and selfishness.
I just want to highlight before Stu's excellent question.
Excellent.
My kids always that's the kind of conversations we have,
That's
particularly
that's
my 8-year-old. When he comes in, he's like, "Dad, how can I serve this family today?" That's what he always says.
I sense that could be. So I was really applying that to the readers.
Yeah, yeah.
I
No, it's
was going
great.
to use your family because we're best friends. I was going to use that as an example.
Best friend status already. Dang,
Yeah,
that's fast, John.
yeah. Just trying to do a good little
My
callback.
son asked my 6-year-old asked me if he could just eat candy all day this weekend, Halloween candy. And I finally like gave in. I just said, "Sure, buddy. Just eat candy all day long." And he did. And all day. All day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Nothing else. And I thought like it was gonna prove a point to where like, hey,
That
candy's
backfired.
unhealthy. Totally
That backfired.
backfired. He felt fine. Didn't get sick. Just was
That's
like
funny.
running on sugar all day long. And I was like, I wonder what Jon Tyson thinks about that. Is that really being an intentional father? Hmm.
Listen, It sounds like you both had agreement about a passion that he wanted to pursue, and you entered
That's
into his world and went with it. No.
what
The
with it.
only thing I think you could have done better is if you'd eaten candy with him all day.
Ooh,
That would have been incarnational parenting. Yeah, it's the next
dang.
level up from intentional. Yeah.
Next level. Next level. Joking aside, like how do we as parents, I think about this a lot. It's like how am I modeling to my kids? How are they seeing me have godly ambition? Like what am I doing as a dad to show that to my children, to let them see that? Because there's all this other stuff going on, right? Like they're going to be in social media, they're going to be on phones, they're going to have advertising, they're going to have marketing and media and all this stuff. So how do we as parents model this for our children so they see what godly ambition looks like?
Well, part of it is you need to communicate with your kids what's in your heart. Most kids don't have a clue about their dad's inner world or what their dads do for a living. It's all abstract. So part of it's a little vision casting. Hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm about. This is what I do. So you've got to let them into your world by communicating the stuff that's sort of driving your life. Secondly, your kids know what you're passionate about because they watch your life. Sadly, most men are communicating that worshiping Jesus is the low light of the week. And the highlight of the week is the game or the adult hobby they do with their friends. All kids know what dads are passionate about. So part of your job is to align your heart with what you're actually passionate about. And your kids should say, tell me about your dad. Whoo, dad loves church, man. You should see him in worship. Dude, he's getting after it. Like he's more passionate for God about worship than he is about, the Broncos. I mean, like his level of passion is just extraordinary. I think my dad really loves Jesus. When I get up, my dad's in the world. I think in the word, I think he's passionate. When my dad prays, I see tears on his cheeks. He weeps sometimes. He's in touch with a force from another world where he's so caught up. I don't know what it is. Like you can't hide that stuff. And so you've got to get it and then you have to model it in front of your kids. So number one is like you got to get your heart right in the first place. That's why it's all heart work. God, you got to get to my heart. You got to break my heart. You got to move in my heart. And if you're apathetic, the first prayer you need to pray is like, help me to want you. Help me, Lord, I'm apathetic. Help my unapathy. You just got to get in and be honest with where you are and then ask God to start increasing your vision and stirring your heart. And hopefully the book does that a little bit. Hopefully guys are getting this and like, oh gosh, I need more ambition or God, change my ambition. But they see where it's coming from, man. Can't hide that stuff.
That'd
Your
be an
kids know what you're
interesting.
passionate about. Go do an ambition audit. Go home, ask your wife, honey, what do you think I'm most passionate about in my life? And then
Mhm.
don't argue with her. And then number two, ask your kids, what do you think dad loves the most?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. I was going
That's
to do
your
that.
that's your ambition audit. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then hopefully your kids say, "Gosh, Dad's killing it for Jesus," right? Like, is that
Yeah, he's freaking
he's
crushing.
crushing it for
That's
Jesus?
right.
He is
Well,
crushing
you know,
his life with God.
funny, it's a similar
Yeah, yeah.
question we had talked about in our men's group. We're talking about asking our kids like, what do we do? Like, what do we do? Hey kids, what does daddy do? Right? And my 6-year-old son, he said, you just play with me, dad. That's all you do is play with me. And it was over summer, right? So like the kids were off and I wasn't
Yeah,
working a
yeah.
whole lot. And like his answer was, Dad, you just play with me. I was like, all right, that's all right.
Winning.
Yeah,
Winning. That's
Winning,
better than
winning.
crushing. Playing
that's
is
better than
better than
crushing it.
crushing.
That's right.
Dude, you are playing. You are
Depends
killing
on your
it right
perspective.
now.
I'm just
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, so John, we're kind of coming on time, and I know you've got a gala to attend, just all
It's
fancy,
just a,
looking
it's just a
pretty.
world premiere of the movie Bonhoeffer. And if you want to see someone with some holy ambition, mate, Bonhoeffer the movie. I have no financial investment or in this film or whatever. Bonhoeffer is one of my heroes because when everybody else turned inward out of fear, he just said, stuff it. I don't care what it costs me. I will stand. And he ends up getting killed because of it. So
I'll have to
that'll
check
give you
that
some
out.
ambition. It'll give you some
Yeah,
ambition.
thank you for that. And I think to last just to wrap it up, we love action, right? We love kinetic. We love getting after it. Kinetic in the good sense, not kinetic as
Yeah.
in like missiles and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the killing it sense.
Yes.
You pretty much wrap up the chapter with massive action in the world. Like that's
Mm.
the subtitle to that. I'm just curious, and for those men that are struggling, how do you take these concepts? How do you take these things and no kidding, turn that into, I want to serve God massively in action. And to your point, so that my kids, there's no doubt, to my friends, my wife, my kids, my family, there's no doubt left on who I serve and why I'm here.
Well, I sort of close the chapter with getting it back to Jesus, which Jesus is the most holy ambition filled man you've ever met. Jesus asked questions that resulted in him having a heart for the world. Jesus' vision was bigger than just his own concerns. Jesus took massive action, goes and dies on the cross for our sins. Jesus is holy ambition embodied. So to become a man, a godly man, to be a man of holy ambition is to be like Jesus. And Jesus wasn't sitting around twiddling his thumbs, mate. He was 30 years doing manual labor in obscurity, just working. And then when he burst out, he's healing the sick, he's raising the dead, he's confronting injustice. Like he's about that life. So you should pour yourself out as a drink offering and stop doing dumb, trivial, meaningless things that help nobody else and don't even serve your own heart. Stop escaping your life. Stop numbing your life. And we are very good at relaxing. We are not good at renewing. And so I think part of it is just getting back in time, sort of contemplation, not self obsession, but just turn the Netflix off, turn the game off, and just walk around just for a minute and just go like, what am I doing with my life here? Is this the marriage I want? Am I the kind of dad I want to be? Does God seem distant or close? And then you got to channel your frustration with your life into, you need to convert the angst into action. You need to use it as fuel for change. There's two things that move the world: hope and hate. There can be a better future, and I'm sick and tired of where this thing is. So you got to poke into that. You lean into it. You got to sit in it. And I talk about the crystallization of discontent, which is just that sense of like, I will not, I refuse. But you got to push on it and push on it and push on it and push on it until you're going to snap. And most men do not feel the permission to get that deep into their emotions and their frustration. Well, I want to be a good guy. Well, I don't want to screw up my life I've built. It's all just muting their true selves. And I promise you, your wife is looking for your heart to be fully alive. She can handle it. What she doesn't want is you mailing it in out of duty. So yeah, you got to get away from the distractions, get away from the numbing agents, sort of get alone. I don't know how you do this. I do this a lot on a motorbike. I listen to soundtracks from music. They call this, psychologists call this states, where you leave a movie and you're like all inspired. Try and get in that state to be inspired about your own life, you know? And then you use that to take massive action. So then you start putting your ambition in your schedule. You start taking out things that don't matter. You start weeding out the trivial stuff that's not driving your mission forward. You start putting those things in, and you start getting a little bit of momentum. You start getting a little bit of resistance. Like, oh, good, I'm getting in a fight now. It means I'm getting some opposition. I'm getting somewhere. Then and then you just keep moving forward, man. You build a kind of spiritual momentum based on that, and you'll never know where it will leave you. I had no idea when I'm a teenager in Australia, poking on that holy discontent that God's going to bring me to America. I had no idea when I kept poking on that I'm going to end up in New York City and be here for 20 years and feel like I'm just getting started. I had no idea, mate. But I had a lot of other options. I could have just watched TV, could have just gone surfing all the time. And there's a lot of breathtaking lives hidden underneath our boredom and our distractions. And I just would say, redeem that time. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family. You owe it to God. You owe it to your community. To redeem those small things that don't matter and ask God to exchange those for things that really do. If you do that, you'd be amazed what happens.
Man, what a great way to end with that challenge. Love it. Jon, where do we send people to get the book and learn more about you?
You can go to jontyson.org, which my publisher made me create that website so people could find me, jontyson.org. You can also just go to Amazon or whatever, wherever you buy books. Just go to Fighting Shadows, Jon Tyson, Jefferson Bethke.
Amazing, man. Well, like David said, fantastic book. Absolutely loved it. Guys and gals, go get it, read it. Jon, thanks for your time, man.
Great chat, and thanks so much.
See you.
Thank you, Jon. Thank you for listening to the Connect Man podcast. If you are growth-minded, community-focused, and willing to take uncommon action to redefine success and live an abundant life, visit our website at www.thekineticman.com to see all the ways we can connect.
And on our website, you can find more information on everything we're doing, like joining our meetup page to get the details on our webinars and our local Thursday gatherings here in Colorado. From our site, you can also find more information on and sign up for the next Kinetic Man retreat and the next house of our mastermind group. Finally, we always appreciate your love and support. Please share this episode and go rate us on your favorite podcast player of choice.
Thank you again. Now go take uncommon action.